Aloha and welcome to Capital Connection with your host, Senator Angus McKelvey. I'm your moderator, Tom Blackburn Rodriguez. Our guests today are Joanne Nolan and Chris McGreevy from a really terrific organization, the Red Cross, that was founded way back in May of 1881 by Clara Barton, who started the American Red Cross based on the International Red Cross that came out of 1863 with a Swiss businessman, Henry Dunant. So at any rate, they are here representing the Red Cross on Maui. Joanne is currently deployed to Maui as a liaison to support the Red Cross response to the deadly wildfires. Joanne has been with the Red Cross for 6 years and serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the Los Angeles region of the American Red Cross. And Chris is currently deployed, I like the word, he's deployed. Chris is currently deployed to Maui to lead the long-term recovery efforts for the Red Cross. Chris initially joined the Red Cross in 2010 as a volunteer, following a 20-year law enforcement career. Chris joined the staff of the Red Cross in 2022 and now serves as Director of Long-Term Recovery, and we are grateful they both are here. And now your host of Capital Connection, Senator Angus McKelvey.
Aloha, Tom. Aloha, everybody. Thank you for joining the show today. I'm excited to have our guests here from the Red Cross to talk about the work that they're doing.
Well, they'll be coming on in about 7 or 8 minutes, Senator, and I wonder if there are any things that you wanted to let the audience know before we bring the guests on.
Well, no, just earlier this week I attended the Kihei Community Association and thanked them for putting on what was a really great event at their new location there in South Maui. And during there, we talked about the very same risks that South Maui faces, that West Maui face, and how next session we need to work to try to diligently do many different things to prepare South Maui so that should a fire event happen, it won't turn out like it did in Lahaina. So that was a really, it was a formative event, and being able, the firefighters were there as well as Councilmember Cook and others.
Now, also, there was discussion about the greater impact of the August wildfires, that not just in Lahaina, but island-wide. There's things like job loss and other kinds of impacts as well.
Yeah, I've gone ahead and I've used what I call rings of fire analogy for it, whereby you have ground zero, the 5 by 8 mile area that was decimated by the fire, but then you have damage that goes outward, including what I've nicknamed contamination. And so the rings analogy is used to show that even though you're in South Maui, you're in Central Maui, your house or business may be intact, your school is fine, etc., you're suffering the impacts because of the fire. Everything from reduced hours, job loss, to economic depression, shortage, all sorts of different things, insurance, rates, availability, mortgages, et cetera, et cetera.
I have noticed that a lot of restaurants are short-staffed or cutting back on their hours because of the lack of people who are visiting Maui, who kind of canceled their plans. Maybe they shouldn't have. They can still go to all other island locations. But somebody told me, Tom, go out and eat. The restaurants are really hurting. Do you see that as well, Senator?
Yeah, I mean, we do. And, of course, part of the problem, the challenge, is to educate visitors or potential visitors, return visitors, that, Maui is not, the entire island wasn't destroyed by the fires. And there's a lot of parts of the island that are fine and intact, and by visitors coming to those parts and visiting on Maui, they're helping to the economy, and they're helping the fire victims, survivors. Now, many of whom have obviously been affected on this level, too.
Senator, I saw a note that said DUA sign up extended. What is DUA? DUA?
No, that's DUA, it is nicknamed, is Disaster Unemployment Assistance. It's a program that the state stood up to try to get benefits using the unemployment system, as was done during COVID, to people who have lost their jobs. One of the things we're working on trying to get the governor to hopefully consider expanding this program to look at people who lost hours. There's a lot of people who had hours reduced, but they still have jobs on paper, and because there's no official recognition, not only do they not get help for those lost hours, even though they still have a job, it could hurt in trying to get into some of these forbearance programs because there's no official government recognition that the person has lost hours. So on paper, they still have a job, and therefore, and they don't live in the fire area and their house is intact. So some people are being told you may not qualify for forbearance anyway. So these are kind of some of the issues that we're working through right now. But the deadline for signing up and being approved was this last Saturday, and the director went ahead and announced then that he managed to get it extended for another week. So people have one more week to sign up for it. We're really trying to make sure the checks go out. The checks have not been going out, and this is a big problem. But still sign up. The deadline's been extended. People should take advantage of it, and hopefully we'll get the state to start getting these checks out post-haste.
Let's emphasize that, Senator, for people listening, and let your friends and neighbors know they have an additional week to sign up for disaster unemployment relief, and they may have thought, well, it's cut off and I missed it, but no.
Exactly, and it is a cumbersome process right now. We're working on trying to get them to digitize the portal because it is a paper process right now. But still, it's worth it to go through the humbug to get signed up for the assistance, as this appears to be probably one of the long-term structures that will be used to try to get people some aid.
Senator, in the few minutes before we bring our guests on, there are legislative measures that are coming up. When does the ledge return?
Let's see. These are some of the things that we discussed. The KCA. The legislature does not go back into session until January, but obviously discussion of bills and ideas goes on. Even before the fire, this is the time of year where we go out in the communities and gather them. So some of the ideas that, from both the experience of the Maui, of the Lahaina wildfires, has been used to look at some of the things that we did in the past that we need to go ahead and we need to look at again. One of the things is state captive. Loss of insurance, we've talked about that in the rings of fire analogy. The state captive is what Massachusetts used to underwrite for condominiums who couldn't get structural insurance anymore. When you look at the fire lanes and land maintenance issue, especially in South Maui, the Pi'ilani Highway. And then, of course, as far as we need to expand the R1 reservoir that we did last year, and we got it passed, but it was a small amount of money. And we need to invest much more heavily. And finally, two things the disaster showed us is we need to try to secure and pre-stage mobile links and other types of emergency communication devices so that you don't have the meltdown in communications that happen. And then more of an effort and funding for detailed emergency planning and looking at the structure that currently exists. These are ideas that we discussed in South Maui with the community. And the community there, obviously, they looked across and saw what happened to Lahaina, and they're very nervous, and they want to ensure that we in government are being proactive, and that's what some of these ideas are about.
Well, I know that the fire that actually was above South Maui, above Kihei, nearly jumped the Pi'ilani Highway and would have gone into a lot of homes. So it was luck and a change of wind that stopped that coming down. I went over there and took a look at it. Another 100 yards, it would have been over the highway. So
yeah, it was very close, and and it could very well, the ingredients are there for it to happen again, which is why one of the initiatives, similar to what we did with the ambulances a few years ago, when I was in the House and Senator Baker was the senator, we're going to try to do the same thing to assist the firefighters by getting them equipment called strikers. These types of modern urban firefighting equipment could be used for water and foam, and from what I understand, talking to firefighters could have made a big difference. We're no longer a tiny rural county anymore, so hopefully we can get the support to invest in the type of equipment we need to fight these kinds of urban large-scale fires.
Well, our guests are in the studio, Senator. Joanne is here, and Chris, say good morning.
Good morning.
And that was Joanne.
Good morning.
And that's Chris. So, Senator, we're going to turn the show over to you and them, and to learn more about what they're doing. the long-term efforts of the Red Cross and how they're actually helping shelter people on the island. So, Chris and Joanne, it's all yours.
Aloha, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to everybody.
Thank you, Senator. It's an honor for us to be here and to help the community.
Now, Tom touched upon the history of the Red Cross briefly, but maybe give our listeners, sorry, I keep saying viewers, give our listeners a snapshot of what the Red Cross is, what their overall mission is, and how do they fit into the usual, or not usual, but a governmental disaster response.
So, American Red Cross is focused on alleviating human suffering in the face of emergencies and disasters. And the way we do that is with a network of volunteers across the country. The American Red Cross is also part of the International Federation. So we're part of an international movement of Red Cross, Red Crescent organizations across the world. And we're there to support each other. So in the American Red Cross, we have 49 regions across the country. And we are 90% of our staff are volunteers, trained, committed, dedicated volunteers who respond to everyday disasters to these large-scale, devastating disasters such as the Maui wildfires. As a non-governmental organization, we are not required to, we don't look at citizenship, we don't look at capacity, we look at the human needs and how we can meet them. However, we do partner closely with FEMA, with county, with local organizations, with other state organizations, so to make sure we're coordinated, providing the best and fastest care to those in need.
Yes, no, and that's the most important thing. But you usually are called in then by a governmental entity at some stage of a disaster response. Is that how the Red Cross enters a disaster picture scenario, or does the Red Cross do assessments individually and say, okay, the situation is we're going to start to try to go ahead and mobilize into this area, we better reach out to government? How does that work?
So we have relationships at the city, county, state, federal level with the partners. So we're in coordination. So we're not doing redundant work with them. We may go in, we may have maybe more resources in one time. They may bring in different resources. So it is so important that it's a coordinated partnership. We've been working really closely with the County of Maui, State of Hawaii, and FEMA, so that because resources are limited, so we want to make sure we're providing exactly where we need to provide the services.
So you provide services, resources on numerous fronts. Can you maybe give us a 30,000-foot view of some of the resources that you usually are helped to provide, and maybe insofar as what Red Cross is doing, the different areas that Red Cross is working in so far as the wildfires go?
Sure. And in a disaster, our primary role is mass care. That means sheltering, feeding, safe place to sleep, warm meals, mental health care, spiritual care, health services, and to help everyone who's been impacted by the disaster begin their recovery. We work with the families, the individuals, to meet the unique needs, unique challenges they have, so they can begin the sometimes long and difficult road to recovery. And we also are able to provide direct financial assistance, in fact, immediate financial assistance, which comes in basically a cash card that we provide directly to what we call our clients, our survivors, so that they have some agency. They have the ability to buy what they need at that moment. And
well, that to me is really one of the most important things that you're doing, is you have a system set up. You've been very aggressive about going out and really trying to beat the bushes to get as many people to sign up as possible. So your system, pretty much your list of victims is pretty complete, is it not? I mean, insofar as trying to reach a population of affected people through some kind of a system. You've been able to identify nearly most of the fire victims that have been needing assistance through this?
Yes, we have. And we have a nonstop 24/7 volunteers working on this and gathering the information. We have over 8,000 individuals in the hotels and condos right now. So that's a big number to manage and get the information. Sometimes we have language barriers. Sometimes folks are uncomfortable or don't know the process. So it is family by family reaching out, understanding their needs, but also collecting the information so that we can provide the service as quickly as possible.
I'll add.
You you use a caseworker model then to dive into beyond the population to try to individualize a plan. Is that kind of the approach you guys take or are taking?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Sure. So I wanted to add to what Joanne said before as well. We've been reaching out to communities that haven't presented to us as well as we become aware of them to try to reach folks who maybe aren't staying in our congregate or non-congregate sheltering setting. As far as our work goes with our financial assistance programs, in immediate assistance, we try to identify needs and start to lay the groundwork so families can plan their recovery. It's very initial at this phase, just trying to meet their immediate needs. But our volunteer casework and our staff work with individual households and families to help them start to think about what's next early on so they can start building on that recovery plan going forward.
Chris, you said, use the phrase immediate assistance. Can you, for our audience, our listeners, kind of say where's some of those immediate assistance and what you've done so far?
Certainly. So we refer to our first round of financial assistance as our immediate assistance program. That's funding that's based on your damage assessment, or if your home is uninhabitable in Lahaina or in Kula or any of the other areas that were impacted by the fires. So that's financial assistance dollar amount is based on the size of your family, and it's multi-use money. So you can use it for whatever you feel there's a need for. We don't specify, we don't monitor what you're spending that money on, but it's designed so you can meet your immediate disaster cost needs. And then we have future rounds of financial assistance planned. Right now, our clients that are staying in our non-congregate sheltering programs also have access to additional funds if they have a need to help them transition to a more sustainable living situation. And we call that shelter resident transition. So they're working with our workforce there in the hotels to plan for what's next. As nice as many of the hotels and resorts are that people are staying at, it's not comfortable and it's not sustainable for a long term to live in those environments with a whole family. So we're trying to help people find those solutions.
Yeah, to your point, Chris, it's the hotels have been absolutely wonderful. I mean, because like in the case of I'll just name one, Royal Lahaina off the top of my head, and they and their staff have made the families feel welcome and and try to help them mentally heal and get away, so to speak. But it's a hotel. Everybody, the people there, the families recognize it's a hotel. And it's not conducive really for families, especially for long-term living. So that is important. But how do people in these hotels, are they then to start to go out and individually identify housing resources? Is there an agency, or do you play the role of matchmaker? How would somebody in the shoes of a family person, how would that look to them as they try to approach from being here at a hotel to transitioning out to something long-term?
So we have a housing task force that's working with the state and the federal government. There are many, many local organizations that existed prior to this disaster, and everyone has a seat at the table and are trying to find solutions for families. If a family has a solution, if they're going to stay with a family member or whatever the case may be, we're supporting that any way that we can. We're trying to identify resources and help provide referrals to those organizations to help people find solutions and support folks who find their own. So some folks have found their own place, and our shelter resident transition funds can help them with moving expenses or first month's rent potentially. storage units if they have things that they need to put in storage that they can't take with them. So it's very versatile, but it's not going to be an easy problem. We have so many people in our non-congregate sheltering. It's not going to be an easy solution, but I think everyone from various backgrounds, nonprofits, government, are working to help find those solutions.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why it was welcoming to hear a softening, for lack of a better word, of the return to tourism beyond the certain dates that were thrown out, because it's going to take time. And this is why I, on my end, nicknamed it Project Thanksgiving a month ago. A month ago, I was like, okay, we need to start planning this process out so that you can transition, people can transition from hotels and immediate housing to something long-term, so that the hotels can then slowly return to being hotels and work with the community to bring in the right kind of guests that you need, so you don't create an uproar. But that's why what you're doing is so important. But you, at this point, though, right now, I mean, do you have any kind of formalized relationships with any housing entities, condos, or a thing that is an option for families as well? Or is it through all these other agencies that you have relationships with that would provide those kinds of things potentially for a family?
So the Red Cross doesn't have any direct agreements with housing like landlords or anything like that. FEMA is looking at solutions and identifying opportunities to rent. We're mainly working in collaboration with all of those partners as they identify resources, making sure we know what's available so that we can refer our clients that are in our hotels to those solutions. And in long-term recovery, we have the opportunity to help support financially some solutions if that's possible. But right now it's very much a fact-finding and planning stage. I'm not directly involved in the housing task force. I'm just kind of a recipient of the information as well.
You and me both.
Yeah.
Chris, just maybe to clear up some confusion. There's been dates bandied about, and when you have to leave the hotel. Is it September 9th or something? Different things are happening. Can you or your colleague give us what's the skinny? What's the true story on if you're in a hotel or whatever? When do you have to leave? How does it work?
So here's the good news. If you are a resident of Maui and you were impacted by the wildfires, your home is inhabitable, your home was major damage, you have a place to stay. We will provide the housing for you. So we have been working diligently since the fires happened to make sure everyone is registered through the Red Cross and FEMA, if possible, so that we can then plan a long-term recovery. So if you qualify, if you were impacted directly by the Maui wildfires, then Red Cross, FEMA, the county, we are committed to continuing providing safe shelter and helping with your recovery. If you were, for whatever reason, you have a home to go to, if your home was not impacted, then we will work with you to transition you out. But there were a couple dates, so I want to talk about the first date, September 29th. That is when we are focused on making sure everyone who is staying in one of our non-congregate shelters, hotel, condo, that they are registered with us, with FEMA. That is really critical, and so we've been really making a push for that.
Well, I just underscore that one right there.
Also, there has been talk about the reopening of Maui October 8th. That will have no impact on our ability to provide the housing to all of our clients and the survivors. And that was, I know it's important that we, as the senator spoke about, getting the economy going, but we also know that we will have the capacity to provide housing for all of our clients.
I mean, this is one of the things that's been about Maui that wasn't, compared to other areas that suffered this fire, is because we have these hotels and resorts here. They were able to partner with us to provide this immediate housing. But that's not the case in, like, for instance, at the campfires in California. They were living in tents and had to go to other towns. I mean, a lot of places didn't have that ability. Do you see that in your work at the Red Cross, that I guess, analogy that's been used?
We do. We certainly do, depending on the capacity of the sheltering. And yeah, there have been what we call congregate shelters, which is very large gymnasium with a lot of cots lined up. Still providing 3 meals a day, mental health, spiritual care, health services, casework. But the conditions are even more difficult because you got everyone living together under one roof. So this is
Yes.
based on the trauma that the survivors have gone through. It's provided them a little bit more comfort by living and having their own space, their own rooms. But as Chris said, we know this is not sustainable. We want to
Well,
make
it's also
sure.
provided a bit of a health buffer too. I mean, a lot of these times in these large mass shelters, especially with COVID, you could have an outbreak, and so by having people in separate rooms, wouldn't that help them also be of assistance insofar as managing any type of outbreak, insofar as groups of people all of a sudden living together in an emergency situation?
Senator, that's absolutely right. And that is a focus for us to do as much non-congregate, as we call it, sheltering for our clients, just for that reason.
Okay, so it's called non-congregate shelters, the official term then.
Correct.
Chris, just a question for you. What is bridge assistance?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our next round of financial assistance is what we refer to as bridge. And the reason it's called that is it's designed to bridge the gap between the immediate assistance that our clients need following a disaster and when more organized community resources from other nonprofits and government are ready to stand up. So that is also damage-based or would require your home to be uninhabitable, as is the case with many homes in Lahaina. It's a set dollar amount that's designed for each individual or family. It's very easy to receive that assistance, especially if you've already received our immediate assistance program. When the program launches later in the fall, many people will receive a text message and an email saying that they may be eligible for this assistance. They have to confirm that they have an unmet recovery need. That could be they're still in non-congregate housing or not in a sustainable living situation. They've lost a car. They have transportation issues. They've lost their work or job as a result of the disaster. They have health or mental health concerns that are lingering because of the disaster. And as long as they have, and those are just some of the examples possibly, as long as they meet those qualifications, they can very quickly, over the phone or on the internet, receive additional financial assistance to help them with their ongoing needs. In long-term recovery, we very much support and help to convene a community-led long-term recovery group or committee. And those are conversations we're having now with our government partners and with nonprofits and local organizations. A lot of people have heard about the disaster case management program that the state is applying for. That's a grant to bring disaster case managers from the federal government that's administered through state government, but then often it's awarded to a nonprofit to manage. And once those systems get brought into place, that's where the other end of the bridge is that disaster case management program. So no one organization can provide everything that's needed. FEMA can't fulfill everyone's needs. The Red Cross can't fulfill anyone's needs. So those disaster case managers working with long-term recovery groups, in an ideal situation would just be everyone who has resources, talent, and skills and funds that they can provide to help the community recover will convene, and that's kind of the next step in that longer-term recovery.
Sorry, Chris. One of the issues that's come up is that victims have to constantly be filling out forms over and over and over again for all these different groups that a lot of them may or may not know that they have services, and they may be missing certain things. Has there been a discussion among partners about some kind of integrated portal for fire victims to use, a sort of one-stop shop for them to sign up for all of the potential benefits they may be able to receive, to get housing resources? Is there any discussion of that so that people aren't constantly having to go and reapply here, reapply there, reapply here, and maybe miss out on something along the way?
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful solution hopefully one day will be a realistic thing. I will say right now it can be very daunting for people to have to apply and reapply. From our perspective, with the conversations and the information that we're gathering when we speak with survivors in our hotels and when you're applying with our immediate assistance program and again through Bridge, we're trying to capture as much information in our systems as much as we can so that people don't have to retell their story if they don't want to do that. And then we'll do our very best to make available when disaster case managers become in place and that disaster case management program becomes a reality. If you consent to us sharing your information, we don't share information unless our clients empower us to do that. So if you've consented to sharing information with partners, then we will provide as much detail to those partners as possible so that they don't have to start from scratch when they go to the disaster case managers. And those disaster case managers really will help them connect with other resources. I can't say that they won't have to fill out more paperwork and apply for some of the resources because every organization has their own requirements. But we do try to convene and work together to share information where we can to make it as seamless as possible.
Joanne?
Well, that's great, and maybe that's something for the future to try to create some form of a disasterlogin.gov portal, if you will. But go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Senator, I just wanted to give Joanne an opportunity to let people know that there are some jobs available. We've been talking about case managers and other kinds of things. Joanne, can you tell us what you're doing to hire from the local community to try and deal with some of these needs?
Yeah, this is an important part of our transition. So immediately after the fires, we deployed volunteers from 50 states for Red Cross, and they've come into the community to provide that immediate assistance. We are now looking long term. As Chris said, we'll be here for years to come. It is so important for us to have individuals on the team who know the community, who understand the challenges and the opportunities, and it's also a chance to support the local economy. So we've had a job fair. We've extended it through the middle of October, and we have at least 100 positions. Right now, we've already hired, I believe, 65 individuals, but we are doing what we call on-the-spot job interviews. And we have everything from managers and supervisors, lodging coordinators, health services team members, disaster mental health services. These are temporary positions, could be 3, 8, up to a year. And the compensation is a weekly with health benefits of $1,500 to $2,500. So we encourage folks to come. We have the job fair going on at the Queen Kahamunu Center.
Queen Kahamunu.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank you for helping with that. And so please come by and interview. We'd love to really build a local team to support our efforts.
Now, this job fair going on, what are the days and times?
So right now, the job fair is open from 10 to 6, and we've extended it. It'll be weekdays for the next 2 weeks. And we have also a lot of this information is on our website at redcross.org/HI help, as in Hawaii help. So redcross.org/HI help. Not only information about the jobs, but all the information Chris talked about, all the resources that's available to folks here. And if you are interested in volunteering, we would welcome volunteers to join our team at the Red Cross.
Now, Maui has a diverse population, and how does the Red Cross ensure that its services are accessible and culturally sensitive to all residents?
Great question. We take that very seriously. We are, one of our key principles is neutrality and impartiality. And we are open to all, regardless of citizenship, where the individual came from. And we actually train all of our volunteers and staff receive training. In fact, we provided specific training as they deployed into Hawaii about the culture here, about to understand and how to be respectful, that really honoring the local understanding of the community and the needs and to respect that. By bringing in and hiring individuals who are local, that allows us also to continue to be representative of this community. Additionally, we've been working with individuals to make sure that whether it's certain language barriers, we have volunteers who speak the different languages, translating the materials for our Filipino communities, for our Spanish-speaking communities, because we want to make sure every person knows it is safe. We are only care about their needs, regardless of their citizenship and nationality.
One of the questions that's come up has been, and it's just the coconut wireless, as we call it out here, which is our version of the telephone game, has been that Red Cross collects information, but the Red Cross, that information that you collect is proprietary and confidential to the Red Cross. Unless a person authorizes it, you don't share it, or it's not accessible by other entities like federal government entities.
Yeah, Senator,
is that correct?
Absolutely correct. We honor that. We have no interest. We are solely humanitarians trying to help the individual. We would never share that information unless they ask us to.
Yeah, and you're a Title VI entity, or I don't know if you're not, but even so, you provide language access vis-a-vis interpreter and other types of bilingual material. Is that as well? We
do. We've created quite a few documents here locally for the multiple Filipino languages. We've actually been working with the Consul General from the Philippines, helping us with that. We have Spanish language in Spanish. So if there's a need, if we're missing a community, if you recognize a community that's not being met or language, please let us know. I want to throw out another number, 1-800-RED-CROSS. If you remember anything else, that is a number that will get you to who you need to talk to at the Red Cross, 1-800-RED-CROSS.
A couple questions that came in, I'll just throw them out there, is one person was curious insofar as if I get Red Cross aid, I have to pay my mortgage. Can I use Red Cross aid or apply for Red Cross aid to pay for things like mortgages? Is it limited?
You can use Red Cross financial assistance for any need you have. We don't limit what you can spend it on. We ask you not to spend it on a couple of things, but we don't monitor what you spend it on, like alcohol and firearms and things like that. But whatever your needs are, that the money is to help you with your recovery. So we don't specify how you spend that money.
And really, what's good about that is the agency aspect of it. And I actually think you have an incredible list and a vehicle for delivery that should be utilized for other types of relief-intended aid. That's my little editorialization right there, because you have developed such a complete system, and it provides a way not to have to repeat the information over and over again. I commend you on the job you've done in being able to. So for me, in government, it's like, how do we capitalize on the hard work you did and not simply keep duplicating? But I also probably understand that in order to ensure confidentiality, you yourself probably have limitations on things that you can do, even if it's in a partnership model, right, to protect the victims.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, even when we do share information with permission from our clients, we make sure that the partners we're working with agree to terms relating to that they're not going to use it.
Another question that popped in. My place is being taken over by a family who lost their home. I'm going to be homeless. Can I sign up for the congregate shelter program? Am I considered displaced? If people are displaced like this, where would they go?
So I would encourage them to reach out to us, and we can try to help them find solutions. We recognize that this is something that happens often in times of disaster, and that's why we work with partners like Hawaii Legal Aid Society and other legal aid societies to help with those illegal or improper evictions. Like I said before, we can't be everything to everyone, but we can help try to support organizations that can fill those needs.
How long will
and also it's good for listeners to know that what you guys can do, what areas you do work in, and what areas that you do not necessarily work in at all.
Senator, I'm curious as to how long the Red Cross is planning to be on Maui. Do you have an answer for that?
Certainly. Well, I can tell you that we are always on Maui. We have a much more visible presence because of the scale of the disaster, but our Pacific Islands region is here, and we have an office here all the time. So we always have a presence with staff and volunteers. We are under a contract for non-congregate sheltering through February at this point to provide non-congregate solutions for people displaced by the disaster. That could extend based on the need and how quickly people find more sustainable solutions. The contract's with the state of Hawaii, so really the decision is the state's decision as far as how long that program goes. But we'll be here as long as we need to be. And with long-term recovery, our program, we are hiring additional staff to help supplement our local regional staff to lead our long-term recovery efforts here. That program will last for 3 years from the date of the disaster. And that's where we're helping to convene partners to help find solutions if it's something we can't do. And then we'll be launching in a few weeks a request for proposal. So funds that we have available that we've raised thanks to the generosity of the public and our donors, that we can invest in community partners who are doing work to help with recovery. And that may be around housing or legal aid or any mental health, any number of things.
Senator, we're going to wrap up this segment of the show with much appreciation for our guests. Is there any question or comment you'd like to make before we
just
move on?
One quick thing, that's come up before is that has been the looming government shutdown. The question is, will this affect Red Cross, and does Red Cross or is Red Cross, if this does affect FEMA, will that impact the transition program if FEMA funds are being envisioned as part of the component?
I can't speak for all the legalities of the federal government and how they're going to be impacted. I can tell you the Red Cross is a non-government organization. Our dollars are from the donated dollar, and thankful for our donors and providing the support they have to allow us to do the work that we do. It will not impact the work that the Red Cross does, and we'll worry about,
Which is why giving to the Red Cross is an important way to continue your work in the community.
Absolutely.
Because of the organization. Okay, thank you.
Senator, before we let our guests go, why don't you go ahead and tell people how they can be supportive of the Red Cross?
I'll let Joanne take that one.
Well, thank you for that. There's a few ways you can support the Red Cross. One is with your time as volunteers. Also, if you give blood, we always need blood donors. And lastly, financial contributions. 100% of our support comes from the generous public, and we're grateful for it. So if you can go to redcross.org, there's some great opportunities to do all of those things.
Well,
and you
Senator,
can earmark it for Maui Fire too, correct? If you make a donation to the Red Cross.
Correct. And the money that we have raised for the Maui wildfires will absolutely stay here and support the recovery.
Senator, that's an important piece of information people have asked, so those donations will stay on Maui. We appreciate you very much for coming in, and I think we'll move on to the next segment. Senator, you've kind of previewed it. We've got a government shutdown maybe coming. What's going to be the impact on Maui?
Well, it's going to be quite a big impact, and potentially it could. I guess there's some spending like SNAP and other entitlement programs that will not be interrupted, but there are impacts insofar as federal employees will be furloughed without pay. That's a big part of the economic engine for the state, especially in Oahu, and tourism already taking a hit. A hit like that in those sectors will probably bring the forecast down for the Council on Revenue. And that's going to translate into how much money the state has to work with next year. So that's why. So that's an impact of that, a secondary impact, but an impact nonetheless. And the federal agencies are going to decide who's essential, because essential employees would continue, but they would go without pay, but they'd be paid later. My good friend and partner, and one of the unsung heroes, Congresswoman Jill Takuda, and she said it pretty bluntly: government shutdown will slow recovery efforts. And so that's why I'm hoping that they'll put politics aside and come up to some kind of a deal so that the aid can keep flowing. And as you heard from our guest earlier, FEMA is a linchpin in trying to combine efforts together to provide, resources to people so they can try to create some kind of a stable interim life while we rebuild and recover the town, which of course would be affected as well.
Well, Senator,
So all of these things would affect us.
you're absolutely correct, because members of the armed forces would not get paid in a government shutdown. So those monies they would be spending in the economy here will not happen, because they're not going to have salaries. They're not going to get paid on their salaries. There's other institutions like that as well. One that I saw in the newspaper this morning, just I could not believe it. The air traffic controllers will not get paid. Okay, so
No,
if you're up
they
there
won't get
flying
paid,
around, you're up there flying around with a guy who's not getting paid. I don't know about that.
Well, thank gosh, the men and women who are trained professionals, and they understand that they will get paid, but it is a strain, as it is on everybody's families, and of course but it hurts us, because now that economic engine that is important to help provide resources for us to stabilize Maui, as it starts to rebuild its economic engine. And so it's almost like, so Jill's pretty blunt. He's just like, this will impede recovery efforts. I think that she's being mild in that quote right there. It's going to create a huge mess, and could potentially extend the suffering of people who've already been impacted. So hopefully the Senate has passed a stopgap bill that is pretty much stripped of any fanfare. I'm hoping my end at the House will try not to get ideologues to attach ideological amendments to it, and things like that, and that they pass that back. The fact that it passed out of the Senate shows that there's bipartisan support for many reasons, including keeping the relief efforts going for Maui.
Well, Senator, FEMA has already said that they're going to run out of money here at the end of September. So I don't see...
They are, but they can deficit spend. See, this is an important component. And Congresswoman Takuya and I, when we were talking, she told she made that point. Yes, they technically may run out of money, but they can deficit spend. But at the end of the day, obviously, it's all the other. So that's not theoretically the case. However, Congress is obviously going to need to fund them for any deficit spending that occurs. But at the same time, all the other functions of FEMA, to your point, Tom, of employees getting paid, of logistical side, everything else that operationally could slow FEMA down.
Well, Senator,
so that's a realistic thing.
We do know that the government will be able to spend money on what they determine to be essential services, like in the Justice Department and criminal cases, that kind of thing. It's very interesting. I have been a federal employee, and whenever these things come bouncing around, you always want to know, well, am I essential or not? Because if you're not,
every agency gets to decide that for themselves. What's essential, who's essential, who's not.
Yeah, so you want to be essential.
Hopefully, the FAA sees ATC as essential.
But I was just saying, you really want to be an essential government employee.
That's another concern, though. We a little jokingly, but if there is some kind of a loss of carriers, of flights, because of staffing, ATC challenges, or even operational ground or challenges or anything like that, then all of a sudden you now have less visitors able to come here.
Senator, what is the acronym CPN? There's a CPN hearing?
Yes, it's one of many hearings. I sit as a member on the CPN, or it's Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee. And my colleagues in the Senate have been very helpful, and both right after the fire happened until now. And one of the things they're trying to do is ensure that the community can ask questions of resources and agencies that are affecting their ability to move through the recovery, and to get answers and provide a transparent documents to the public of the questions and issues and topics raised, answers given, and the status of these things, as well as to make sure that any presentations that are given are, in my mind, an open doc on this can provide a template perhaps for other places. Hopefully they won't need it. But if they have to go through this, the work that we're doing could possibly. So it's open to everybody. It's open to the public. However, this meeting is only on insurance. So if you have insurance issues with recovery, questions, Carriers not refusing to, let you do fire because it's a hurricane. Are my rates going to go up? All those things, we're going to try to tackle them, answer them the best we can, get back to those if we don't know the answer, and track the work that's being done. It's going to be the first of many committee hearings we hope to have on numerous subjects. But in order to ensure that work can get accomplished, we're trying to focus each of these into a specific area. So this first of many in this area, and in other areas, is on insurance, and it's Thursday at the Civic Center at 10 a.m. Like I said, we'll be there to get your questions and concerns about insurance things with the fire, and try to get the answers answered there, and if not, get you the answers and create a document that you and everybody else can access to see the work being done and to ensure that the issues and questions being raised are actually answered.
Senator, I'm sure that meeting's going to be well attended because insurance is top of mind for so many people as to whether or not they're covered and I have to say this with all due respect, working with an insurance company is a little bit like swimming in a swamp. Like, what are the rules? What are the details?
Yeah, and as a result, public adjuster enters the picture, and there's other things. So all of these, the macro issues, but also individualized issues. People have questions to their claim, to their, it may not be able to be answered right there, but it will be documented. Obviously, not in a way that is going to identify the question asker, but and ensure that it gets followed up on. It's an answer, and maybe it will require legislative action. If 10 or 11 people are coming up saying the same thing, and it appears that the legislative action is one of the ways to address it, then that would be included, so to speak. It's about getting a discussion going with the community meaningful.
Senator, how can the audience contact your office with questions or concerns?
Yes, our questions and concerns, you can contact my staff, who's been working pretty much almost full tilt since the tragedy happened, 808-586-6070. Ask for Wendy or Beth. My email, send McKelvey at capital.tol.hawaii, spelled out, .gov is the email, and then Facebook, Instagram, at send McKelvey.
Be sure to tune in to Capital Connection every Wednesday at 7 a.m. right here on KAOI 1110 a.m. and affiliated FM stations. Senator, aloha. Have a great week.
Aloha, sir, and a great week to everybody out there, too.